If you ever catch him surfing onto the battlefield while performing a handstand, there will be ass whoopings handed out. He keeps it smart and fun as he fights for justice to keep the oath he made when he became a doctor. Every life needs to be saved, but he can also detain any sized villain. Say it's some switch hitting villains in the front and the back of their heads. Can even say it's Maybelline. But one will know he's not called the worst simply because he has one of the most dangerously infamous superpowers. He's called the worst because they sing about him when he is on. I was trying to get through it without laughing. When he is in or out of action, he's simply a legend with figuring out ways to fight so justice can prevail. Everybody, it's the worst. Name: Timur Zavori. Superpower: Gruntage, which is the superpower that controls virus and bacteria. Fighting techniques: jumping and ninjutsu. Weapons: airboard and a set of guns. He's a lawful good guy. 35 years old, 5'11", 227 pounds, of Afghani Russian descent, and he's a human. Born in Ariel City, Navagoto, the L Nation of the Leo Yellow Dimension. He is a college professor at the Coconut Institute of Higher Learning, also an adventuring archaeologist and physician, as well as a galactic class hero through the Thunder Rose group. He was born on October the 12th. He's a Libra, a negative blood type, sexual orientation of homosexuality, good orderly direction for his religion, and his secret is he likes to dance in a bedroom when Scarrose isn't around, always in a long sleeve, his socks and underwear, having the time of his life. When Scarrose isn't around, he has brown hair, is short, low-cut forwarded fades, full low-cut beard. His eyes are green with lighter green rims. Body type of a buffed wrestler type, lightweight. Skin tone, regular peach. Physical condition of fit like an assassin and triathlete, equally built in strength and speed. Marks, scars, and tattoos. His body is covered in penetration and surface wounds. Being hunted is no fun, but he has a sense of humor about his scars that his best friends love and all of his acquaintances adore. The worst scar was the one that turned him a little heartless, the one by the leaders of Temperature X. He was stabbed in his abdomen, and if the blade would have been moved by any distance, his stomach would have been the reason he died that day. Instead of never taking lives, he had to kill those 7 men, and his lucky number changed to 7 after that. Clothing. He keeps a wild cardigan game going, but that's about it. He isn't big on clothing, and no one has a problem with it. His favorite article of clothing is a warm-colored sweater. Very autumn of him to keep it for so many years, but here we are. Red, orange, and yellow striped sweater where the red and yellow stripes are bigger than the orange stripes. Every autumn since he got it when he was 21 years of age proves it's his favorite article of clothing, if I can talk right. Wearing it once a week until spring comes back in full force always reminds him of their perfect year in life, when Scarrose gave it to him on the first day of fall during his 21st year of life. Yes, they've been a couple way before this story begins. The worst treats the sweater like it's a living object, has taken care of it more than his own self at times. Now, his personality. His likes are Scarrose, Dalizzle, his parents, the Thunder Rose group, life, justice, doctoring, taking care of his students, taking care of his patients, and superpowers. Dislikes, gruntage hunters, always having to watch his back, danger and greed. Fears, being lost in space. Hobbies, power training, healing viral infections, healing bacteria infections, snowboarding, road tripping, space tripping, vacationing, drinking wine, and conversing with fellow heroes. Goals: save as many lives as possible while retaining his license to doctor. Occupation: college professor at the Coconut Institute of Higher Learning, primarily, and an adventuring archaeologist and physician. He has been a hero with the Thunder Rose group since his teen years. His favorite food is seafood and doesn't really have a least favorite food. Most prized possession, the chair at his professor class is a smart chair, technologically enhanced to massage the sitter to smithereens. Perfectly getting in tune with a vessel allows for the chair to work its most grand work, because the worst is not a stranger to the battlefield and can be considered a junkie to heroism. Heroism, not heroism. It was very close to heroin. The chair is set to make him increase his heartbeat very slightly from a stoic rate. This helps him quell his thirst for the battlefield so he can properly concentrate on raising great doctors for the future. Vernacular, Temora Voga. That's one of my buddies around the world. Aptitude, IQ equals 189. Book smart and street smart. And I did not flesh out how his brain works. I gotta go back and do that. But in short, his brain is very in tune of interpersonal relationships, listening, communication, all things encompassing human interaction. He is, because his parents were so loving and his father was always helping people out and including him in the practice, actually having him there. He wanted his son to be a doctor as well, and the worst grew up believing in all of this, so he had his goals set from an early age of taking care of people. So his brain is always in tune of the nurturing way of listening to people so he can take care of them. His psychological condition deals with the good and the bad that belongs to his code name. That wasn't entirely his idea. Now, after so many years of venturing into heroism, the superhero guild decided to code name him the Worst. Just their shorthand for him at that time. But Dalizzo caught a hold of it, then started calling him that. All three of them be singing the Worst. Parks and Recreation style, completely at random but all in good fun. The bad side of having such a code name deals with his superpower and emphasizing the specialty behind it. Gruntage itself is always used to advance human longevity. Because of this responsibility, he sometimes thinks he could just kill the people who often want to use him for experiments. Just asking him for information pertaining ancient viruses is annoying, even at low capacity. The main people that never ask him to do anything are all main characters in the story. They all let him handle his business, and they never pester him about the life of having gruntage as a superpower. Character behavior: adventurous, altruistic, intelligent, dangerous, powerful, and chill. Relationships: Scarros. I remember when I was first starting to do this, and I asked him, wait, what kind of man would you specifically like to date? And he told me, and I was like, you know what? When I see a good enough face, maybe that'll be good enough for him. And I got lucky with the face of the guy I found. But developing this inadvertently brought Dalizzle into it, and because Dalizzle was already made before Scarros, and they just happened to be connected because I wanted like this trio of heroes, and I think, if my memory serves me right, they're the only trio of heroes in the story, I think, right now, even though I can just go to the right again and again and again. Actually, they're not the only trio, but they're like they're the most constant trio, because it's usually like groups of 4 or groups of 2 where people know each other real well, and they usually out there on the battlefield together. Because Captain Fate's got his whole militia, Loon Aegis got his whole militia, the Worst, Dalizzle, and Scarros are all Members of the Thunder Rose group: Allura, Omniverse, Crisis, Bazooka, Flow, Blur, all members of Purge. There's only one triad in the story. New Genesis, Resende, Zero Skies, and Dizzy, they all know each other. And Big Bright, Big and Bright. And that's a group of 5. Let me see. And Loon Aegis is always with Sin Rays because she's the second in charge. And all these other groups, not really many trios like that. No. There's even 2 time cops, and one of them is evil, so one of the villains is a time cop, so it's 3 of them, but they don't really work together. Tomorrow and Metronome, they work together though. I lied. Then you got Ganto and his sister Cataclysm, Zeophany and Cuerva. Yeah, I think they're the only solid trio that still work together like that, because everybody else in the Thunder Rose group is leagues older than them or just a few years younger than them. So those 3, the worst, Dallas and Scarros, are considered a trio. So let's go on about this Scarros relationship. They met when they were 7, and when their families migrated from their own dimensions to come live in the real world. They both went to planet Zelora, ended up in City Chan at the mere ages of 7. Oddly becoming neighbors in the same apartment complex, then oddly becoming friends because of it. They were cool as kids, but turned tumultuous when puberty struck a few too many nerves. Leading up to that, they were considered besties with Dalissa as a pen pal from Dr. Summer Camp. They were inseparable during the summer and constantly in each other's lives outside of it, because they oddly lived in the same time zones on different planets of different galaxies, but they didn't stop Dalissa from leading them to each other in ways they would come to think later. Then they were 13, hanging out at a park with neighborhood friends. It was getting dark, the street lamps came on, and the kids were disappearing one by one. Then it was those 2 standing on a giant jungle gym, no apartment lights on in any windows. Scarros couldn't sense any conscious brain activity from any window with a viewpoint to the park. Their orange light sticks strong to them as they stood atop of it, just talking about things. Scarros asked the worst to sit with him, facing him in the very center of it. It was like a dome, kind of a jungle gym thing. And they talked and talked way into 9 p.m. Then Scarros asked if he could show him something. Leaned back just enough so he could show it. Then he leaned forward. The worst met him with a kiss and then disappeared into the jungle gym. Not entirely consummated, but they started going steady after that. Dalissa got the news the next day, and her entire day was lit at school. Social and other pressure problems. None really, other than constantly looking over his shoulder for gruntage on us. Beliefs and morals. He believes that every person should be allowed to age to 100 years of age without a hitch. It's why he's a superhero, and he's definitely against killing anyone. Positive characteristics: altruism and status quo, always willing to sacrifice his time. Eyes are the warmest in the universe, very welcoming, very professional, and is known for curing the sick instantly with or without their knowledge. Doesn't really have a lot of negative characteristics. And now let's get to this background. His parents, mother is named Janisa Josal Ghulam, 75 years old. Father is Hedison Namad Zuvari, 75 years old. History: Timur comes from the Leo Yellow dimension, the dimension that's connected to the essence of Galaxy 5, the One Galaxy. He was born and raised there for 7 years until his parents decided to migrate to the real world. Before the migration, he was showing intellectual promise in the direction of medicine. wanted to be just like his father, who was a doctor, a powerful aerologist with a penchant of creating some of the most powerful warriors at that time in Leo Yellow. Had a whole life of helping people develop power. Timur knew what was going on and wanted to be a part of it, to the point that being a doctor was just a part of it. He always had a desire to save lives as a superhero, but kept all that a secret. But for him to truly become a doctor, he needed a real world education. Unfortunate for his parents, they know that life is better in the real world when it comes to education. They took their son there in hopes of giving him what he desired as a kid. Never regretted it, even when he started acting up as a teenager. It was a short time coming. But the summer of his 8th year in life, he was shipped off to a young doctor at summer camp where he met his best friend, Scarrose, and Dalissa. From then on up until he found his true bravery in the age of 13, these three knuckleheads have been planning on becoming teen heroes. The worst knew he was going to have gruntage powers. Scarrose was already a psychic, and Dalissa made anything happen while retaining their powerful brains. They were able to put their brawn up too. The amounts of hours these three would spend away in danger was crazy, and their parents couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. Because Dalissa made clones of all three of them, had them looking good but mute as hell for a long period of time until their parents figured out what the hell was happening. It was all because the Thunder Rose group allowed them to go on adventures with them. While they were playing around with clones that would soak up information for them, they were in other dimensions, galaxies away from home, and becoming stronger by the fight. Regardless of the missing out on real time dealing with reality, they were living a high life only designed for super beings that use their vessels properly. The worst, Scarrose and Dalissa, grew to be guaranteed threats by the time they were 17, but here's what set the worst apart from his clique. The worst has one of the most rare superpowers, gruntage. It's the power that controls viruses and bacteria in a 100% capacity, and because he was raised with love, he never used his powers in hazardous ways. He wanted to be just like his father, with helping people become the most powerful versions of themselves. In reality, the worst always made time to learn from him as much as he did with the Thunder Rose group. Inadvertently, a few of the group had Dr. Hedison as an aerologist back in the day. They didn't know it was his son until he graduated high school. They were pissed but honored at the same time, because those superheroes literally didn't look into their personal lives. They just protected them while they were doing their jobs. Yet because they took care of them, the worst developed a virus that would enhance a super being's vessel and not spread. This virus increased outer space survivability, physical power, physical speed, mental power, mental speed, defenses, and the most important, giving a super being the ability to fly without having to go through the annoyingly long ceremony to acquire it, which is horrible because it's a 30-day fasting process that deals with a whole lot of homage to the universe. But moving right along, the Thunder Rose group, Scarrose and Dalissa, became way too powerful to function after that. Regardless of Scarrose and Dalissa having the ability to fly themselves because of their powers, throughout history plenty of ways have been created for humans to fly, but the timeless one is the ceremony. The worst figured he'd never have a month's worth of time to go through the excruciating ceremony. Knowing that super beings with gruntage as a superpower are usually hunted, he didn't want to put a target on his back. Yet, there the target was, because when the Thunder Rose group could all zigzag through the air like Knights of Sidonia, them villains were pissed. The worst ended up being the single-handed person to end the tyrannical ways of an organization called the Temperature X. An organization that's known to have far too much control over the 6 moon-sized space colonies of Galaxy 5. Galactic forces have been spending decades trying to stop them, but it took a young man creating an alternate way to fly to flush them out. The Thunder Rose group were out of control when all of them got the ability to not worry about getting left behind. They were toe tagging so many villains it was just comedy by week 6. They were wilding until Temperature X shut down a whole city by sparking 14 riots. Then when all of them melded together, it was so out of control that law enforcement couldn't gain control. They were just letting the people tire themselves out until the worst came down to do crowd control via the virus in a bacterial way. That's when Temperature X would strike. A long story of fending for his life after getting separated taught him about protecting his own neck at 17, and he has never killed anyone in the company of his lonesome. Oddly, the 7 heads of Temperature X were on his ass, and he didn't have the security clearance to activate a Gundam. He probably wouldn't be alive to be prominent, to be the prominent physician that he is. 7 men with 7 men with worlds of combat knowledge could not take out a novice of a 17-year-old. Laughable after he survived it all, but the blood spill he commenced was on the obliteration level. Blew at least 3 of them away first and had to figure out another way to get rid of the last 4. Fearing for his life was not a normal. He wanted to feel again, but this brainiac pulled it off. The last kill was courtesy of the fastest flesh-eating virus he could muster. As he stood there with a whole blade penetrating his torso, the final guy was about to twist and fuck up his healing process, but acting fast enough to use a virus to stop his movement, then start the process from his core. He watched as he had to back up slowly, so when his skeleton collapsed, the blade wouldn't ruin any more of his organs. The worst held on to life while trying to force super being healing, but woke up days later from a coma of trying to survive too hard. His parents finally found out that he has been the worst for 3 years and couldn't be more proud of him. Literally was in a hospital room for the entirety of him getting there. The Thunder Rose group consisted of, at that time, 7 adults and 3 teenagers. Going over and dialysis sheet, but again, Captain Mello, Electricity Welder, Soriana, Weather Welder, Black Rex, Black Hole Tyrannosaurus Rex Welder, Missing Bullets, X Welder, O-Red, Fire Welder, Skip to My Blade, Sword of the Universe Welder, Milo Miller, Pollution Welder, and those 3 teenage knuckleheads who had no business out there on the battlefield so goddamn early in life. But you know, super beings know what they want. And his home, he is in possession of at least 4 homes, main one being his spaceship, the Green Anchor, one of the most famous ships, and everyone knows him because of it. Just a vibrant green polyhedral shaped ship that looks like an eraser add to a pencil. It has red windows and is big enough to house 50 people. 50 families. Let me change that real quick. His ship is too big to enter planet atmospheres repeatedly. The fuel it takes to get off planets and to land safely is pricey, but he doesn't need his spaceship to survive on planets. His other homes revolve around the Coconut Institute's faculty neighborhoods, a casa in the tropics, and the condo downtown in the city next to the Coconut Institute. His parents are mostly living out of the casa in the tropics, and he often lets real patients rent out the condo downtown for free. He believes in sharing the wealth, keeps his patients feeling blissful for doing what he prescribes. He treats them just like his father treated him. He'll go down in history as one of the best doctors and superheroes because of his generosity levels. Possessions. His airboard, the Cloud Maxed, is his main weapon. An airboard that houses a set of plasma pistols home and his main partners use. So the airboard thing, I get that mostly from Phantasy Star Universe when Ethan Weber was on that damn airboard going through that one stage and doing all that racing and shit. And I'm like, wow, thanks Sega. This is just what we needed. Something that ain't got shit to do with running through levels and finding items. But I like the airboard thing because I love racing, and inadvertently there's a lot of airboard racing going on in a lot of my stories. But it has all of their plasma weaponry in it and whatnot, and it's how they pull out their guns and use a shield and keep enemies from berating them with bullets and things like that. It looks like he designed it specifically since one of his favorite pastimes was snowboarding. He looks like the Dr. Serpent. Well, it looks like the Dr. Serpent was placed in an infinity design. No matter what angle you look at it from, it makes the serpent appear to be in animation. The center, the core is blue with accents of yellow and white. The airboard itself acts like a portal cache, and it has X engines strong enough to damage spaceship metal. Regardless of him being a snowboard champion that has surfed around a space battle or two, he couldn't shake having an airboard as a weapon. He has hands for millennia, knees for nebulas, and body slams for black holes meeting. The airboard ensures that he can fly straight to anyone in any condition for that knockout. The material he had used to create this model of an airboard comes from God meteors. One as surprised with his partners, and his choice of manufacturing the metal came in the form of an airboard. There has been plenty of times that airboard has shielded people from devastating nuclear type attacks. The material is impervious because the meteor of gods is made out of the in-between dust that forms when two black holes meet. And then we have his pet, Devi. Devi is a Great Dane, a blue and white spotted one. Lovely coat of fur with a solid white head, but has a noticeable 3 spots under his left eye that looks like a triangle. Her eyes are red, bold and bright red, but always keeps it gentle. She gets along with Scarrow's and Dalizzel's dogs perfectly. His abilities. So, physical, jumping and ninjutsu are his main fighting techniques. He dabbles professionally in sambo, wrestling, judo, grappler, Krav Maga, Muay Thai, and killer. He has a lot of guts when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, just another addition to why they call him the worst. Can heavily be compared to actual professional super ring fighters is an understatement to what he can do against 10 men at once. That's without the backing of his superpower. He has been known to bless chins with music that you would happily play a newborn. Round and round them stars will go if he connects a perfect hook or jab. You've been warned. Because of his gruntage powers, all of his stats are heightened, making him the definition of a super being. His most distinct attribute is accuracy. His eyes are highly enhanced and knows how to read opponents quite quickly. This gives him the edge of hand-to-hand combat as strong as Scarrow's, who grew up as a natural fighter. Then there is his infamous healing factor, which is a natural ability that goes hand-in-hand with how much he trains his powers. Lastly, because he can control viruses and bacteria, he can render a flesh shield that makes his skin as tough as Gundanium. Now when it comes to magical, projectile mastery, the worst can use tentacles, orbs, liquid balls, liquid sprays, beams, and rays from his mouth, eyes, hands, and feet. He has incredibly dangerous long-range game because he doesn't mind using temporary flesh-eating bacteria in his sprays. What a bacteria eats then restores. Because of his oath to be a doctor, he isn't trying to take lives. Just incapacitate them long enough to apprehend them. He has rarely killed, even though he's in his mid-30s. He has the right amount of know-how to not actually kill people. When it comes to his tentacles, he will use them at will, and they extend from his forearms mostly, but can make them all extend from his backside, sometimes making him look alien-like. Virus understanding. He can communicate with every virus known to man and every virus he hasn't witnessed. Because of his gruntage DNA RNA, he can telepathically understand what viruses do and how they communicate. When he telepathically wants them to do something, he can keep a virus in a human vessel from moving and succumbing to being destroyed by white blood cells or nanotechnology. Bacteria understanding, same as virus understanding for bacteria instead. Microorganism designing. This gives him the ability to create any virus and/or bacteria at will. He can create specific microorganisms to fit the bidding of what he's thinking at will. Over the years, he has gained the ability of making a dense ball of just viruses or bacteria for research purposes, where he'll deliver certain species to new labs, etc., etc. This ability is how he created the flying virus, as well as how he maximized the beyond version of the flesh-eating virus. Lastly, this ability allows him to create healing viruses and bacteria, adding to his infamous healing factor while he's on the battlefield, as well as being another healer on his superpower team. Now, microorganism multiplication. This allows him to multiply viruses and bacteria at an accelerated rate. During bouts of ultimate mode, he can literally make up millions of cells every second. Normally, he uses this ability at a low frequency to ensure villains survive the fight. flight awarded to himself after he made the flying virus that nearly got him killed, giving him the means to fly with or without his airboard in his transformation. The worst has all of the capabilities of traveling to his spirit grid excuse me, to learn a transformation form of symbiotic. It's already in his DNA RNA but can't activate it until he desires to. All of his ability points go in the direction of projectile mastery, energy build, and magic attack power. And now his weaknesses. Gruntage doesn't really have any fruits other than making somebody bow down to a microorganism. So he is entirely open up to all primary, secondary, tertiary, and non-elemental damage. But because he's physically strong, it's still going to take a lot to defeat him. But he doesn't have any ups like that, and he doesn't have any weaknesses. So he's just in terms of knocking his vitality down, it's best to just not go knuckle to knuckle with him, because he'll punch your shit out, and you just have to outwit him. He's one of those fighters that you have to go toe to toe with, understand with, get the best of him by some kind of means. And it's not light work. It's very hard to fight a gruntage person, because you never know when you go get sick. You never know when they go pull out flesh-eating viruses. You never know when you can just go flat out die or get incapacitated. And that's one of the reasons why they're hunted, because they're such a dangerous force, because microorganisms are made up of more microorganisms, and in reality, he's basically a beginning footprint of the universe, because everything is made up of molecules and all of this stuff, and going all the way down to it, he can manipulate everybody's molecules by using viruses and bacteria. So that whole thing early in his characterization sheet about talking about the fragility of, god dang it, what was it of helping out the advancement of humans. That is one of the things that gruntage people can do, but they can also be the doomsday to humans. They can be the extinction to humans. And like you never know when somebody is just going to flat out do what they got to do to destroy the entire universe. And there are a lot of characters with a lot of potential to do that in this world. Allura can fool around and get pregnant by a real hydra and make up a whole new species of human. And that in itself could possibly be apocalypse. Omniverse could cause an apocalypse. He could go into the portal realm and find some energy. He can go to a universe and find monsters that are big as planets. He can go to every world, every existing world, and find something that will fuck up their world. He could do that. He could be an apocalypse. Roughhead and Galtos, Shveta, they could be people with hell and heaven as a superpower. They could be apocalypses easily. And I think so. Out of all of them people, they could be the apocalypses of the first 13. But gruntage wielders, they could really do damage to existence, and they could just take any kind of with creating the microorganisms, because the ether system is so in tune with the brain. It will literally make up a virus that way he thinks, and for the most part he cures people, but he still has those that do damage. But the fragility of making up something that small and making it do something specific is great, because he can make up a virus that will go directly to your brain and take all of the love out of the lobe where love and hate comes from. He can make a virus that will take out all of the love and turn somebody into a berserker instantly. That is entirely dangerous, and that's one of the main reasons why gruntash wielders are hunted, because they have just, it's, when you see them, it's all fear-based. So that's why the worst is also named the worst. And everybody in the Thunder Rose group loves him. He never has like given them bad vibes, and then they got pissed when they found out he was Dr. Hedison's son. Ooh boy, that would be a funny flashback scene, because him, Scarros, and Daliza, they walk across the stage. Daliza walks across a different stage, but like the team is set up, but then he the worst walks across the stage, and his parents stand up, and they loud, real loud and proud. And some of the members of the Thunder Rose group, they look, and they're like, I know that ain't him. And they up in the air, like doing the telescope thing, looking down on the ground, looking at all of the action from the air. And they be like, they can't be him. And then they be like, who? I'm like, oh, look at that one person in that row right there, and they talking in the air, and they like, do you think that is who you think it is? And then they be like, nah, that can't be him. And then they question the words afterwards. See, like, yeah, my father is Dr. Hedison, and they be like, they turn their backs, they're furious. They're like, damn, this could have been some pertinent information to know 4 years ago. But it's all water under the bridge by now. But him being connected to one of the most powerful aerologists who can help people fine-tune their own superpowers, go in the right direction in the spear grids and things like that, he already has all that knowledge, so he is very well aware of what kind of damage he can do as a gruntash wielder, and still decides to do the greater things with the superpower by healing people, healing the masses, taking care of the masses, traveling the universe, being powerful, making sure that his good graces reaches as many places as possible. And that's usually what superheroism is about. And at this day and age, when a story begins, he is considered the first one on the watch list. And there's other gruntash wielders as well, but none of them are as active as the worst, because even when college is scheduled and things like that, he's still out there like, I need a teleporter to get me to so-and-so place. And he has scheduled like 14, 17 teleporters that'll get him from Solar System 5 all the way to, let me look at the map real quick, because some of them be closer to each other than I like to remember. But front view, top view, they he could get somebody to take him from 5 to 8. And it'll take about 14 teleporters, 5 to 7, 14 teleporters, 5 to 11, 1 teleporter. It depends on who he asks to teleport him. And he'll be out there with Scarros and Daliza all the time. Them niggas are very hard to separate. And you have impossible to kill 1, impossible to kill 2, then impossible to kill 3. Because Scarros has this thing about him that'll put fear in your heart, and you like, why he gotta be 7 foot with a spear and talking like that with psychic powers, and he don't even have that Phoenix bullshit that Jean Grey guy, and he can still rip people apart with his psychic powers. So you have 3 people, because Dalizo can turn into a wood chipper. You got 3 people that can disintegrate humans immediately, and it's ridiculous because the villains are like always trying to come up with a way to kill him, and the worst is probably one of the easiest person to get rid of, because he doesn't have any like high abilities that will make him invulnerable, but he also ain't gonna go down without a fight. And he got those two invulnerable people with him, and they're like, not today, Satan. You have his lover and his best friend. Dalissa would jump into some acid real quick because she got that diamond shit, and they be there's so much to talk about and so much to unpack with these three, but I need to make some informational videos concerning black acid and black holes and dark matter and the frailty behind certain super beings being hunted and stuff, because a lot of it pertains to the worst, because he has the microorganism superpower that's highly detrimental, and he just really chooses to do good with it, and he will not kill anybody. Like in a story, is you have the whole side of heroes that have to kill, the license to kill. Then you have a side of heroes that could kill but will never kill, and never happens. But even Shveta has killed before, and they don't really like killing. Like even Crunch don't like killing people. Killer loves killing people. There's a clear difference between them, because Killif is in the business of making sure peace happens. Crunch is in the business of collecting people and taking them to places and making sure that they're okay, making sure nobody dies in outer space alone and shit like that. And Killif is in the business of not asking questions and cutting heads in half and stuff like that. Scarrose is in that same business. The differences between how people use their superpowers is crazy, because the worst is very gentle. Dalissa is very gentle. Scarrose is not a gentle doctor. Not at all. He is very hardcore, and he gets that from his father, because his father was a dragon, a monster slayer, a dragon tamer, a dragon breeder, handling all kinds of mythical species and shit like that, and had a son that wanted to be a doctor. But at the same time, his son is still mighty as Colossus, mighty as Superman, mighty as Hulk without all that bulk, and still retains mental fortitude to be a doctor. Still handles classes. He's considered one of the best professors at the Coconut Institute. So is the worst, and so is Dalissa. Like that's a power trio, definitely. I'm gonna have fun getting a Scarrose, finally finishing his characterization sheet. But I hope you enjoyed the worst, and I hope I didn't run off too much. I don't think there's anything else to add to his. His is very gung ho on the line of, on the fence of do good or do bad constantly, and he's going to be one of those characters where his character development focuses on doing the right thing, and because the story is highly focused on end times, and nobody knows if humans are going to survive or not, and he will still choose not to kill somebody, and there are going to be a lot of situations where the characters are going to have to make up these very strong decisions, and I think that the characterization sheets will lead everybody in the right direction and keep everybody solid throughout the whole story. So I'm going to keep the worst, but also keep him as a saint, and continue with working on the Crimson Collective. Until then, keep it beautiful. Mwah.